Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on the Standoff Christmas special here on New Zealand Sport Radio. Good evening, Richie. It's been a while, but it's good to be back. How's the off-season been for you so far?
Off-season's been good, mate. How about yours? I'm a bit disappointed you're not rocking the Santa suit. You got the beard all sorted. I thought Christmas special you'd be all decked out.
I had to have a trim. It was getting a bit too wild for my liking. But yeah, no Santa suit here, unfortunately. But I've got the new Warriors jersey on, so
yep, very sharp.
It's good to see. But yeah, tonight's going to be a little bit different. Unlike our usual schedule, where we talk about games and the news, we don't really have a lot of that. So we're just going to break it up into 3 slots. We've got our first slot. We'll just have a general chat about all the news that's been going on since our last show. Then we'll stop and we've got some questions for each of us and hopefully some questions from you guys. And then we'll end it talking about all the signings that have happened since our last show, because there's been quite a few, both for next season and the season past that. So yeah, it should be a good night for a bit of a chat. Remember to send us comments and questions throughout the show so we can hopefully answer some good ones like that. And we may as well just get into all the stories, Richie.
Let's do it, buddy.
I loaded it Warriors heavy at the start. I thought we'd get through all the Warriors stuff first in terms of the news. So first one we've got is obviously the Warriors have announced Puma as their new apparel partner and released the new jersey, which I'm wearing at the moment. What are your thoughts? I put my thoughts on the jersey, that I really liked it, but I wasn't a fan of the double Pumas, which I called Panthers on Facebook, which was always a great thing to talk about. Bit of a brain fart there trying to figure out what animal a puma was, even though it is in the name. But what were your thoughts on the jersey?
I like it. I know you made the comment about the Pumas facing the same way. It would have looked better if they were maybe facing each other, but I suppose it's a logo, so they don't really want one facing the reverse direction. I agree with you in that sense, but regardless, I think it's a sharp-looking top. It's not too big a departure from the previous one, but what they have changed with the V across the chest, I like. I think it looks nice and bold.
Yeah.
And it makes you look good, Brad. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I'm still hoping for Santa to come through with the goods in a couple of days' time. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for you there. Yeah. I had a brief conversation with Anton Posa, who is a big Warriors fan in Australia, and he's involved in a bit of the marketing side of things, I believe you'd say. And he explained the logo thing, saying that Puma wouldn't want to invert their logo, so that's why it is the way it is. So it's like one little thing that I'm not a fan of, but looking at it now, you don't notice it too much.
No, I think it's a small thing.
Yeah. More news though from the Warriors. Peter O'Sullivan left the club to join the Dolphins to become their head of recruitment. I did a show with Ruin Hammer talking about that and the pros and cons. And see Simon's here. Hey, Simon.
Hey, Simon.
And we talked about the pros and cons of him leaving and joining the Dolphins. We'll get into the Dolphins in a sec, but him joining them kind of sent a lot of nerves around the NRL with all the talent he was going to snatch up, which hasn't really happened yet. But with him leaving, the Warriors made a few changes. Assistant coach Craig Hodges has moved into a general manager of football role, and Stacy Jones has taken his spot as assistant coach. You missed that show for Ruin Hammer, but what were your thoughts on Peter leaving and the changes within the club?
I was a little disappointed with the news of Peter leaving. I understand, it's a fantastic opportunity, setting up a new venture. But I feel like he's done a lot of good work here with us and brought us some really nice signings. And off the back of Phil Gould also stepping away from us, it felt like a bit of a double blow. A bit of disappointment, but hopefully it doesn't see our recruitment take a bit of a dive. It'd be nice to see us continue to bring in some good names, even with Peter O'Sullivan gone.
Hopefully, we did lose our big target, which was Joseph Manu. Which we'll talk a bit later when we talk about the signings. But yeah, hopefully that was just a blip, and the Warriors can get some pretty good players on board that they're eyeing up. Craig Hodges has said they have been looking at players, but they want to have the mentality. I listened to an interview with him. He said it was a mentality of if you've got a 17 or 18-year-old kid in a position here that looks the goods, you're not going to sign a guy that's in his 20s in the same position. So it's good to see that. We've kind of seen in the past where we've had some good players that were younger and we brought in someone else because they're kind of more ready now instead of developing. And then that young player goes off and becomes a great player somewhere else. So hopefully we see that become a thing of the past, fingers crossed. And next bit of news, we had Tohu Harris named as the Warriors captain. We kind of talked about it quite a bit and towards the end of our season and said he was kind of the most logical choice. I talked about this on my Facebook page, say that he's the most obvious choice, but it's going to be interesting to see how he is as a captain because we're not on the field with him, but he's kind of perceived as quite a quiet leader, a bit like our Simon Mannerings of the past. And I'm sure he's got enough people around him there that can do the talky job. But it'll be interesting to see. Everyone, you listen to players that have played with him in that, and they seem to say he's quite vocal, and not only vocal, a bit of a sledger. So it might just be stuff we don't see on the TV screen. But I don't really think there was anyone else that was a better choice. I think there was some others you could have gone with, but he just seems the most logical.
I agree. I don't know that I buy into him. I think maybe he is, he's not exactly extremely vocal, but having heard people, like you say, with the lists of best sledgers around the NRL, he was getting tipped by a fair few of the other current players being up there as one of them. So, I think he's the logical choice, irrespective of talk. He leads with his actions, and I think he's got a good group of leaders around there with Tennessee Lesniak, Sean Johnson, who are now at that stage of their careers where they're very good leaders. And I think he'll have a good group of leaders in the leadership group around him to help him out there. So I think it's the logical choice. I think even Adam Fanua-Blake tasted a bit of captaincy this year, so he's not going to be short for help.
Definitely, and he's still out injured until around May, I believe they said.
Yeah.
So we'll see the likes of a Fanua-Blake or a Sean Johnson or someone take over as captain in the first couple of rounds. But yeah, it's exciting times as a Warriors fan. As it always is this time of year, we kind of forget what happened the previous season and put our blinders on and hope for the best. Last bit of Warriors news before we go on to other teams in the NRL was just a little bit, but in the weekend, the Warriors hosted a fan day for an open training session. It was mixed emotions seeing all the pictures and the videos because it looked like a great day, but very jealous.
Should have been in Auckland.
Yeah, would have been great to be in Auckland. I haven't spoken to anyone at the Warriors, so I couldn't vouch for it, but I'm sure when they're back on New Zealand soil, there'll be something like that they will do here as well. As a thank you to fans over here that have gone forever, it feels like, since having football here. But yeah, so hopefully we get some news on that when we get into season 3 of the standoff. But yeah, looking forward to it. But next, we'll go to the rest of the NRL now. We had Benji Marshall. He's returned to the Tigers in an ambassador role. I think it's a good move for him. I know he's played all over the place now, but he will always be a Tiger, and it's good to see him be able to go back and promote his old club, and that there's no ill feelings with his exit. What do you think about him going back as an ambassador?
Yeah, I think it's good for both parties. Good for Benji to pick up something like that for his post-career. The Tigers, based off of what we've seen recently from them, they need a whole lot of help. So having Benji back, like you say, exactly where he belongs. He'll always be a Tiger at heart. I think it can only be a good thing for both parties, and it's nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. And we had some retirement announcements while we were on holiday. We had Keegan Hitgrave announce his retirement due to concussion issues, which is that's tough way to go out, but football's football at the end of the day, and you got to think long term about your health. So wishing him all the best for wherever he goes next. But Corey Norman also announced his retirement. It's quite an interesting announcement because he said he basically just didn't feel like playing anymore. My question to you, though, Richie, is it more that he didn't want to play anymore, or that no clubs are actually interested in signing him?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, like you say, because he wasn't exactly setting the world alight the past season, apart from kicking field goals to beat us, unfortunately. But like you say, he wasn't exactly getting a lot of bites when he was casting his rod, so it may be a bit of sour grapes, but maybe he's just at the point where he's over it, and I think he's copped a bit of flack in the media as well over performances, so maybe he's just ready to move on and focus on all the other things he has going on, clothing and podcasting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It beats preseason training, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Then continuing, we'll segue from your podcast talk. There was a bit of drama around Brandon Smith's podcast that he did. There were a lot of upset people complaining about his swearing and the way he announced his move from the Storm to the Roosters. I've got a take on it, as I always do, but what was your take on it?
I can understand Storm fans being a bit aggrieved with, the manner in which he was talking about wanting to go to the Roosters before anything had been signed.
Yeah.
In terms of swearing, I'm neither here nor there in it. I mean, I think for me, it's great to see sports personalities on podcasts because they're able to speak their mind and be open, and it's not a mainstream media format where they're kind of bound to say certain things. But I enjoy the honest conversations with sports stars on podcasts. That's kind of the beauty of it. So to complain that he's swearing or whatnot, you wouldn't catch me complaining about it, but that's just me.
Yeah. We don't swear on our show, as we know. It's probably the time I swear the least in my week, this hour on the show. So I've got no problems with the swearing part, and I think I did a special show with Paul last week for his Patreon supporters, talking about podcasts, and Geordie Barrett talking about league in a podcast, and we mentioned the Brandon Smith one, and I wanted to point out the irony that the same people complaining about all the swearing from Brandon Smith were also praising the West Tigers documentary that was dropping F-bombs every 5 seconds. And so it was like, I don't see that as the issue. But yes, the announcement of him leaving and what he was saying about the Roosters, I can see, if I was a Storm fan, how that would rub me the wrong way.
Yeah.
But if you listen to the whole interview, the way he said it was kind of taken out of context for the hits. He was saying that when he was in that room with Trent Robertson, the way Trent Robertson was talking to him about what he could do at the Roosters, it made him want to win a premiership in that jersey. He was talking more about the pitch, not saying like, forget all that, this is all I want. It's still not the right thing to say, but that is what happens when you're in a podcast with your mates chatting. But yeah, I can definitely see that side of it. If it was a Warriors player, say if it was Roger doing a podcast, he's like, man, I can't wait till I put on that Blues jersey.
I'd be filthy.
I wouldn't be happy. Not happy that he left, but to hear like that they're already looking past what they're doing now, I think is what people are upset about. But it'll be interesting to see. I think all will be forgiven once he's out there playing for the Storm again and they're winning.
Yeah.
I think the Storm fans will be fine. And they've got an okay guy that can play hooker there anyway. So it's not that big a loss for them, as silly as that sounds, when Brandon Smith's one of the best in his position. But the Roosters thankfully were able to scrape him in under the cap and get him in. So it's good to see. But speaking of money, this one's actually quite a big block. The NRL have signed a new broadcast deal. It was announced this week. The current deal ends at the end of 2022, but the NRL signed a 5-year expansion with Nine to be their free-to-air partner. It's rumored to be around $575 million for the 5 years. I don't understand these deals because I'm just a little guy in front of a camera here, but I wrote down what they basically said the deal means. But it says, under the deal, Nine will broadcast 3 matches per round, as well as every finals match for the free-to-air. They'll also retain the rights to all State of Origin games exclusively, as well as the grand final. And they'll get a 4th match every week in the last 5 weeks before the finals. So I did see, I can't remember who did it, but there was a thing on Facebook that showed all the free-to-air games for this coming season, and the Warriors get one.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect us as Kiwis over here in New Zealand. The free-to-air doesn't apply. We've got Sky. But yeah, it's disappointing for there, but we've spoken to Ruin Hammer before. It's the Warriors fans aren't really the target audience in Australia for Nine. So you understand it goes to basically Brisbane, get all the games. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Dolphins now, where their loyalties will lie. But it's good to see more money come in. The NRL have always said that they want to use that money to help develop the game. Hopefully that means they put some more development into the women game as well. And hopefully it goes to the right places. But what were your thoughts?
It is what it is. I also heard that it means State of Origin is no longer going to experiment with one of the Sunday games, and it's all going to be on Wednesday. And it pretty much means maybe no more mid-year test for the Pacific teams and stuff like that. So from that point of view, that's a little disappointing. I think international footy has already taken enough of a hit as it is over the past couple of years, and it never really feels like it's at the forefront. And I know you and I have talked about this in the past. So from that from that point of view, it's a little disappointing, but good for more money. And like you say, hopefully it goes to the right channels.
Yeah, and Simon's doing our work for us, and he said the new free-to-air deal will come to New Zealand for selective games as well from 2023. So that'll be good to see as well. Still doesn't affect me since I pay squillions to Sky every month so I can watch my NRL. But yeah, the more you can get free-to-air games. And he's also said, so he said from his reading, the Anzac Games and Magic Round will have free-to-air coverage in 2023. And it's things like that that will bring more eyes to the product, which is what the NRL want. The more people they can get to watch it, the more people they can turn into fans, which will hopefully then go and sit in stadiums. So hopefully that happens. Continuing with the NRL's news, they also announced the All-Stars game for 2022. It will be in Sydney for the first time since Sydney, I guess it's their sorry for Sydney not getting any of the finals and grand final for the first time ever. It's both the men's and women's matches were played on the 12th of February at Combank Stadium in Parramatta. So it's great. It's a great stadium. And the All-Star Game's always good. I've enjoyed it a lot more that they've changed it to the Indigenous All-Stars versus the Māori All-Stars. I think that it's a bit better than the draft pool where it was, remember, back when they first started, it was like one player voted from each club. And
NRL All-Stars.
It just didn't really it was just a exhibition match,
Mm.
but with the Indigenous teams playing, it's got a bit more passion behind it, I guess is the way to say it, as a very white man sitting in Auckland. But yeah, I enjoy that game, and it's always a great way to kick off the season again.
I agree completely with it being in its current form. Māori All-Stars versus Indigenous feels like a lot more passion, and having the haka and everything, it's adds to the theatre of it, and it's a perfect way to whet the appetite for the season ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. It's a great stadium for it to be held at this time around. So I can't wait already, Brad. I'm salivating at the thought.
Definitely. And Simon's put some more comments in as well. So he's talked about the free-to-air. Excuse me. There's more free-to-air games than any other code shown in New Zealand with this deal, which is another great point to help get eyes on. And Simon also said he likes the current format of the All-Star game. So yeah, it'll be good. It's always a good way to start it. I also like seeing the nines as well, but I'm more than happy with the All-Star game. And before we go off, the last bit of news I really had was the Dolphins. So we're all excited about the new team coming in, but they've been a bit slow on the recruitment drive. They've had 2 key signings, a third one announced today, as well as 3 youngsters that they've signed. And Wayne Bennett's come out and stated that everyone needs to be patient with the recruiting, and that he believes he won't have the team he wants until 2024. So he's going to have like a makeshift team, he reckons, in 2023, and then all the pieces will fit together by 2024. Can't really say for Dolphins fans because I'm not really sure how many there are yet. But if this was the Warriors starting up, would you be concerned at the moment, or do you think it's still quite a far way out?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know what people really expect. I mean, you're not going to sign a whole team full of you're not going to sign a whole team full of marquee players off the bat. I think they'll pick up maybe a half dozen really good established NRL players that are, quite well known, and then you might get a lot of bit part players filling the holes as well. But like Wayne Bennett said, it's slow and steady wins the race. They've only just sort of started going to market in the recently to try and fill that roster. So they've got time. I'm sure the pieces will fall into place.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of players at the moment have been using the Dolphins as leverage. Dolphins have essentially become the new Warriors, where the Warriors used to be the team that players would use as leverage to get a better deal with the team they're currently with. And Simon put some more comments in. He talked about the nines. He said he doesn't like the nines for the NRL. He prefers it to be international league only. I like either or, but yeah, I think the international, you get to see a bit more, a few more of the up and coming players for your smaller nations get a shot. So it's always, I just like the format of nines. And I enjoy it more when I get to go. But yeah, I think that's good. What is your take, Richie? Do you prefer the international or the NRL, or you're not fussed?
I'm neither here nor there about the nines, to be honest, Brad. I know you're a diehard league head, and you probably watch your local club if it was on telly.
Yeah, I don't leave the house anymore. So
no, the nines I could give or take it. It's kind of like with rugby union having sevens. It's fun, but if the Warriors went out and won a nines title, it wouldn't
different
be the
story.
same. Yeah, it wouldn't. Mm-hmm. It would be good. And would I brag? Yes, but it wouldn't be the same as if they won the NRL. I'd probably be a blubbery mess.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, Simon also made some more comments as well. Said he didn't think the salary cap would allow the Dolphins to have all marquee players, which is true. And he stole what I was going to say. He said the Dolphins aren't the Roosters. If it was the Roosters, they would have the 17 best players in the comp signed up. Exactly. Being completely facetious. The last bit of news I had before we get into questions, I didn't get enough details to really discuss it more, but there's been some COVID concerns with certain teams, with players or people around the players catching COVID. So the only two I remember off the top of my head were the Knights and the Rabbitohs, which it seems to all be okay as of at the moment. It's just it kind of stopped their preseason earlier than expected for Christmas. And I know the NRL are trying to work around a new plan, especially with these, new forms of the virus popping up everywhere, to try to make sure they don't have to be in bubbles like they have been for the last 2 years. They want to kind of keep it on. So I'm going to keep my ear to the ground on that, and we should have a better idea of what their plan of attack is by the time we start season 3. And hopefully it doesn't result in stuff that means that we don't play in New Zealand again, because we really need games here, as selfish as that may be. But
we do.
We need the games here. So that was really all the news I had. Was there any other news that you can think that you want to chat about?
Not that we probably want to chat about, Brad. Yeah, we could. Yeah, there's some naughty corner probably, but a little too naughty, so we'll leave it.
Yeah, we'll leave the naughty corner. Off season's always
it's always naughty
for the naughty corner. So we don't have time in the day. But so we may as well jump into questions. We haven't got any questions from anyone watching yet. So if you've got questions you want to ask us, just yell out. But I'll go with my question first, because I think your question to me is going to take a while. But my question was simple. It was just, there's been a mass exodus of players leaving the Parramatta Eels. Do you think their time in the top 8 is coming to an end?
I don't think their time in the top 8 is coming to an end. I think their time where they're threatening top 4 is probably coming to an end, because especially ones with, they've lost some key players. I think they'll still be floating around the top 8, but I think it's hard to say that they're going to be top 4 or threatening for a premiership. They haven't threatened for a premiership in a long time, but I think that window is probably shutting, especially with Reid Marnie and guys like that. I think top 8, they'll still be there or thereabouts. If they miss out, I wouldn't be surprised. If they're making number 8 up to 5 or 6, I wouldn't be surprised also.
Yeah, I think definitely we'll see. This year, I think, will be their last decent stab with all those players still there. And I think from 2023, they'll be one of those battlers that are battling to be in the 8. Like you said, that 5, I'd say 5 to 10. It all depends on the day. I think it's fair to say you've got teams like Melbourne, Panthers, the Roosters, all up there, Rabbitohs as well, that are all pretty secure to be top 4 teams, pending injuries or whatnot. So it's always going to be a struggle. But yeah, it would be interesting to see. And we do have Simon letting us know. He said in the UK Super League, they'll have 10 free-to-air games on Channel 4. The first time they've ever done that, something they probably should have done years ago. And he did actually ask a question, which I'll let you answer first. Do you think the NRL have a summer league for development players? Or do you think they should?
I know that kind of thing happens with like the NBA and stuff like that. Yeah, possibly. If it's for development players, it's not such a bad idea. Obviously, all the other seasoned NRL players will probably be left out of that to prepare for the season proper. But hey, look, Simon, I think if anyone's going to offer up more rugby league, I'll watch it. I know I was even saying with the Nines, I'm neither here nor there in the Nines, but when it's on, I watch it. And if it's an NRL product, I'd gobble it up.
Yeah. I think so. I know Phil Gould had talked about it briefly, saying I don't know if he was talking about it as a long-term thing, but I think he was talking about during COVID with a lot of these guys that were playing Queensland Cup and New South Wales Cup that weren't able to play a lot of footy, that they should have done like a summer league for them to get some footy, because a lot of them, they basically had a year off, and then due to injuries, they get thrown in the deep end with the NRL, and it didn't go that well for some. Worked great for others, but not for all of them. I think it's always good. NBA do it a lot. I've got a cousin who is a basketballer. He's now with the Cairns Taipans, turning against my poor Breakers, but they do a lot of that where it feels like they're almost year round doing something to get them ready to play in the big leagues. So especially with an extra team and talks of more teams coming on, that would be a way in my head that they could develop these younger guys, so you do have more talent that are NRL ready when the teams need them. So I think it would be a good idea.
Ideally, I'd love a fully fledged reserve grade comp running parallel with the NRL comp, the way it kind of used to be for a lot of these development players. But hey, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, and he also said, he'd watch league year round if he could.
Of course.
I'm here too. I don't have a lot of summer sports. And also see we've got Mark's decided to show up.
G'day, Mark.
He's apologized.
How are you?
And Simon also said, did we see the Business Desk article about the potential NRL team in New Zealand? To be honest, I saw it, but I didn't read it because I've been real busy at work. But I still think a team in New Zealand is a good idea. I still think we need to get the Warriors sorted first. And I feel like, I know a lot of people have been talking about Wellington. I still think Christchurch would be a good destination just for a North versus South rivalry to develop, which it would, because that South Island really just doesn't like us up here. But I'd be happy as long as it doesn't water down the Warriors. As a very loyal Warriors fan, I don't want to see half the team just go to a new team in New Zealand and basically just make the New Zealand teams Warriors A and Warriors B. I'd want a New Zealand team once it came in, which eventually there will be another one. I want it to be able to have its own identity and develop its own like fan base that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think even though I live in Wellington and from a selfish point of view, it'd be kind of cool to have live games to go to. I think a South Island team would be a really good idea. It mean I could really hate them and not feel like I'm cheating on the Warriors with another team, if you know what I mean. If there's a South Island team, I can really get behind hating them and forming a rivalry.
Yeah, and Mark's made a comment about the Summer League, saying that the heat in Australia could be an issue, which is a thing I don't even like. I've seen some of the temperatures you guys get over there, and I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan of the heat here.
Yeah, we're soft over here though with our temperature. And Simon has said that the Christchurch Sky Sports Stadium's a terrible stadium. I've never been, so I don't know. I don't enjoy Wellington Stadium for watching league either, though.
A bit far away from the field.
Yeah, but then I like Mount Smart, so am I the best judge? But Mount Smart, you're right up close, so I'm used to that. So when you go to these stadiums like the one in Wellington or Eden Park, and you're far away from the players, it's not good.
Mount Smart's the greatest place on earth, Brad.
That's true. And Simon said he thinks the French Domestic Rugby League is currently on Facebook or YouTube. Yeah, they should do things like that as well. I don't know how that goes with the NRL deals, but going back into the basketball again, I've been watching more of it due to my cousin playing in the NBL now, but they were playing, I think it was the preseason, but they were playing preseason games live on Facebook because they weren't playing on Sky here. So you could pop it on and watch it that way, and it's just another way to get more eyes on, which is the goal. And he said, sorry, he meant to say that he agrees the team should be in Christchurch. Basically, he doesn't like the stadium in Wellington.
Yeah.
I
think Christchurch are building a new stadium too, aren't they?
They are, yes.
Yeah.
So it would make sense if you timed it. They got a new stadium, put a team in. I think you could work it. I don't want to see the Warriors all end up playing for the, I don't know what they would call them. But I know because it's the Canterbury Rams, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if they'll let them have another Rams team in the NRL, so they might have to change their name.
Yeah, it's been done.
But we may as well get into your question for me, Richie, before we get sidetracked.
Sure.
You may as well. You gonna ask it, or do you want me to say it out loud?
No. Let's go. I like to keep it Warriors related. So we've had a bit of time now to digest some preseason training footage and obviously get the new apparel and get the naming of Tohu as captain. So, we're getting a little bit to whet the appetite. Give us your preseason spoilers of how are you feeling about the Warriors right now? Are you getting a good feeling? Give us your spoilers on where you think we'll finish in 2022. Bit of crystal ball gazing for us.
And sorry, Simon's corrected me before I answer that question. It's the Canterbury Bulls.
He's right. See, that's how much I don't care about Canterbury. Let's make it Canterbury.
I'm sure the Canterbury Rams is something and something. I don't know. But it is the Bulls. Apologies, everyone there. Thoughts on the Warriors. It's a real tough question for me because I feel this way every year where I feel like I'm full of hope.
That's our year.
I'm full of hope. I'm full of promise. And it's not until I write my preview for my website that I let all those feelings go down a bit and look a bit more logically. So you're asking me to do it a bit earlier, which is a great way to ruin Christmas. I'm optimistic. I think the Warriors could have done a lot better this year than what they did. And if they have that as the baseline and you have the likes of Sean Johnson, guys like Ash Taylor, which I know he's on a training trial, but we know he's going to be in the top 30 by the time the season starts. And you've got some players we'll talk about that have been brought in. They've got some good players, I think. I'm still iffy on hooker, as I've been basically since Wade Eagan took the job. But I think he showed improvement. If they can get everything in line and not get the horror injury run that they had this season just gone, I think they're a top 8 team. I would optimistically say 6th. I don't like saying this is our year because it never bloody works. So I'm getting off that train, Richie. That's you.
One day it will.
But I'd say 6 pushing for playoffs, and we know the Warriors. You never like playing the Warriors in playoffs because you just don't know. And it's exciting seeing pictures of Sean Johnson back at training camp. You know me, I haven't always been the biggest Sean Johnson fan. I was quite meh about him leaving. Didn't really affect me either way. But hearing that he was coming back affected me in a way I didn't expect. And I'm generally excited to see him out there. And whoever it is that's going to partner with him in the halves should hopefully do well. And the guys like Chanel and all that will learn a lot from him. And I think he'll just enjoy having the pressure of being the highlight reel player off his shoulders now that the chosen one's there, and Reece Walsh. So, very, very optimistic, hoping for 6th. And, anything less than that will probably make me upset. Anything less than 8, I want to see them get back into the playoffs. I think if they can get back to New Zealand, in the hunt for playoffs. I think it's going to be great.
Mm.
And the last thing you want is them to be at the bottom of the ladder when they come back to New Zealand, because you'll get a lot of people going to that first game because it's been so long. But if they're not in the playoff hunt, you might see that drop. But what do you think on your thoughts for the season?
I tend to agree. I think I think a lot is dependent on how we're going health-wise, and hopefully we don't get hit with the same sort of injuries and roster disruption we had this season. I don't think our club has the fortitude of, the Roosters, who went through the same thing but still managed to, entrench themselves in the top 8 well and truly. So I think all things going well and we stay relatively injury-free and have all our key players making good combinations, I think I would take that prediction of yours. I would take 6th. Looking at it here today, if we finish 6th, I'd take that.
Yeah, and 6, I know 6 doesn't sound that great when it's the top 8 going through, but when you got, like I mentioned earlier, essentially the top 4 spots are already taken. Ideally, or not ideally, but if you look at it, you've got some really good teams that would be from 1 to 5 if they finish 6 with all those guys. Could be anything to go, but yeah, it's so hard. It's a great time being a Warriors fan. You just never know what you're going to get.
Anything less than 8th, I'll be calling for Nathan Brown's head.
I feel like you call for his head all the time. I don't know. I feel I see that a lot. We're segueing away here, but I see that a lot. I've still been I don't like us just firing coaches willy-nilly. I think that's been the Warriors' biggest problem for years. But I don't like firing coaches if there's not someone to bring in to replace them, if you know what I mean. Like
okay.
if you kind of like what they did with the Kearney situation, they kind of sat Kearney and went, shit, I don't know who's going to be our coach now. We'll just figure it out.
Say we finish lower than 8th. Say we finish 10th or 11th. Yeah. And the bench rotation is still really strange. And say like we had this season with Jazz Tavanga sitting on the bench for Kane Evans, or not playing, and Kane Evans is playing. Then how would you feel?
Then I guess I have to dust off the CV and give Cameron a call and say I can do it. Yeah, I think
I agree with you. By the way, I don't think sacking every coach is the right move.
Yeah. If it is that situation where they don't make the 8 and the same problems that I complained about every week on this show continued, and you show that there's been no development in his coaching ability or what he's doing in managing the team, then I think conversations do need to be made. And I still don't, off the top of my head, see a coach that's available that I would bring in.
Yeah.
If you had your Wayne Bennett's, young Morris that was looking after the Sharks, if he was still out there available, guys like that, either experienced coaches or young coaches that have showed promise, as bad as it might be, I'd probably stick with what we've got until the right opportunity comes along. Even if you go, we're stuck with Brownie. But we got Stacy coming up. We'll get Stacy better. I don't know. And yeah, Jeff has said Christian Wolf. I think Christian Wolf just signed a new deal in the UK though. But yeah, ideally he's probably, if you could get him out of his deal in the UK, he's probably the most ideal coach around that isn't currently coaching an NRL team.
I agree though. You're completely right. If there's no replacements around, you don't want another scenario like we had when we ex-coach and we brought Tony Kemp in. That's the last thing you want.
Yeah. And Simon said, has Stacey Jones learned enough to become a coach yet? I don't think he's learned enough to be a head coach for an NRL team yet, but it's always hard because he did quite well coaching Point Chev, but it was a bit of a cheating at Point Chev because he basically just had all the old Warriors come and play for him, playing against young kids. So it was kind of a bit cheaty.
Does he even have aspirations to be a first grade NRL coach?
That's a question I don't know. That's probably something Mark could answer if he's still here, because Mark talks to him all the time with his contacts with the Warriors. And Simon said Wolf would be ideal because of his time coaching Tonga. He's got a good understanding of Pacific Island players, and I know we don't like talking about it. It always sounds bad when you say like you need someone that understands how Pacific Island players work, because there's so many Pacific Island players that like blossom under guys like Craig Bellamy and the like. But I don't know. There always seems to be something there. Ivan Cleary, I think, is still one of the best coming here and understanding how the Warriors players worked. Helped that he played here. I think is a big thing. But he really found a way to develop those young players that maybe I think Manu Vatavai was a good example. That game against Parramatta where he was the worst player on the planet. And everyone was calling for his head, saying he should never play again. Much like people have said about Ed Kosi. Not trying to compare the two. But Ivan was like, no, that's like the worst thing we can do to this kid. We've got to let him get out there again the next week. And then you saw him grow into the winger that he became. If he had been dropped, would that have happened? We don't know. It's looking into the crystal ball type stuff. But it's just those coaches that have an idea on how to approach players and how you have to approach some players differently to others, which is how Craig Bellamy kind of works. He knows how to approach the different people in his team, because not everyone is going to react to either sitting down and being their mate and chatting. They might not respond to that. Screaming at them, they might not respond. I myself wasn't good at responding to being yelled at, still aren't. But it'll be interesting. But I like seeing coaches actually get a decent stab at the job. I feel like the Warriors a lot haven't done that. They've kind of given them a little taste, and they haven't got to build the team that they want by the time that they're given the flick. And then the next coach has got a team that they haven't set up their way, and that just flows on and on. So give him time, but probably be a different story halfway through the year if things don't go well. So watch the space for me jumping off my fence and picking a side. And see Warriors Fanaxi here as well, wishing us Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too, mate.
And you too.
We may as well get off the question section now and get into signings, because I wish I still had it here. I do. I've got spreadsheets of all the team signings because there've been so bloody many.
Look at you go.
Yeah, I do stuff for this, Richie, if you want to take notes. But I've tried to break it up into teams rather than going all over the place on when it was announced, just to make it a bit easier. But I've started with contract extensions because there was quite a few. So rather than signings, just players staying on with the team they're on. So we had Wade Eagan staying with the Warriors. What are your thoughts on that?
Happy with that.
Yep. He hasn't done anything wrong. If there was another hooker out there, unfortunately, all the top hookers have got deals elsewhere.
We didn't get Brandon Smith.
But,
and
Brandon Smith and Api Carousel as well.
Yeah, and Egan's improved towards the end of last year, and he's still a young bloke, so there's only one way for him.
And he's still developing. And I read his interview, I believe it was on the Warriors website after he announced, and he basically said like Nathan Brown had taught him a lot so far as a former dummy, as a former hooker, and there was still a lot of work for him to do, but he knew what he had to do to get there, and he felt like he was getting into the groove. So I think it's a good move both for him and the club. Especially there's not a lot of hookers in that Warriors club right now, so you don't really want to flick off a hooker But speaking of that, Taniela Otokolo had his deal upgraded and he's joined the Warriors top 30 this year. It was a bit of a surprise because I thought he was just going to be a shoo-in to be in the top 30 anyway. After getting limited games in the season just gone, but I thought he did enough at his young age to show his potential. So it's good to see him staying with the Warriors. Any thoughts on Otokolo before I move on?
Yeah, I just hope that if we get into a situation next season where Wade Eagan ends up having to spend some time on the sidelines, if he picks up an injury, I hope we give Otokolo a good stab at it, and I hope we don't muck around and say put someone like Jazz Tavanga, who's, I think that's not his best position. I think probably the 13 or bench utility is good for Jazz, bench forward. I really want to see Otokolo get a good stab at it if Wade Eagan, has to miss some games. I think he's got a big future.
Yeah, and Fanatics has said that the Eagan signing was expected. He reckons he'll be keen to work alongside SJ next year, which is true. I feel like half that roster will be keen to be out there with Sean Johnson. But Cody Walker's extended his stay with the Rabbitohs. I know we talked about it quite a bit, that would his relationship with Bennett potentially lure him to the Dolphins. Clearly it hasn't. Saw a lot of comments talking about it, how the Rabbitohs decided that Adam Reynolds was too old to re-sign, but then they re-signed Cody. I kind of see it a bit weird because, Cody is a bit old, but Cody, you can't lose Reynolds and Cody, a year apart from each other. Rabbitohs would go backwards if they had lost both. And I'd say if you had to pick out of the two, it's Walker right now would be the one you keep. So seems like a logical pick. Any thoughts on Walker staying with the Rabbits?
Oh, yeah, it's good for the Rabbits, but I'll be watching this one. I'll be very interested to see how it unfolds. For me, Walker and Reynolds were like the perfect 1-2 punch. Reynolds, your organizer, Walker out a bit wider, doing his playmaking, setting up tries, scoring tries. So I'm really interested to see how Walker plays this year without Reynolds there as a pairing with him.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting to see, I guess, see how both go without the other one. With Reynolds at the Broncos and Cody staying with the Rabbits. Regan Campbell-Gillard is staying on with the Eels despite all the rumors pointed to him being a big signing for the Dolphins. I talked about it in my question to you. A lot of Eels players we're going to go through at the moment. A lot of Eels players have jumped ship. So I think it's good. There's a couple that they've got. They've kept Regan Campbell, got Junior Paulo, Jake Arthur stayed on, and Haynes Dunster has also stayed. So they are losing a lot of players, but they've got 4 there with 2 heavy hitters and 2 youngsters that show promise. So it's good. And I know I'm not his biggest fan, but if I had to pick between keeping Clint Gutherson and Reed Marnie, I would have picked Reed Marnie and told Clint to go. Looking at it as an Eels, if I want to win a premiership, I think you're more likely to win one with Reed than you are with Clint, as controversial as that may be. But it's good to see the Eels keeping some players because it really looked like they were going to have no roster in 2023 at some point. But heartbreaking news, Joseph Manu decided to stay on with the Roosters instead of taking up the Warriors offer. I think this is where the Warriors fan in me was overtaking my my hosting duties because I didn't think that Manu would come to the Warriors, but I really wanted him to. But the Roosters managed to find some more coin under the mattress and lure him in to stay. So what are your thoughts on it? We talked about it. We were quite interested in him becoming a Warrior, but it's not to be. What do you think?
Oh, disappointed because I was extremely interested in him becoming a Warrior, but those brown paper bags are real good and they're hard to turn down.
Definitely. And that was really it I had for the extensions. I think there were a few more, but I kind of just tried to pick ones that were kind of key.
The key ones,
There's a lot of youngsters that have like extended or been upgraded that we don't really know yet, and I'm sure we'll talk about them a lot as the season goes on next year. But yeah, we'll leave them there at the moment. So we'll get into our signings. First two that aren't to do with the NRL, but Mitchell Pearce was granted his release from the Knights and he signed with the Catalan Dragons. And he's going to be joined by Tyrone May, who was fired by the Panthers. So Catalans have picked up Tyrone May and Mitchell Pearce. I think Pearce will do fantastic over there. I read an interview with him where he said that kind of that last year with the Knights was one of the worst years of his career, not necessarily on the field, but just everything around it. He was just not dealing with the pressure, and he just needed to get out of the NRL bubble. Tongue in cheek there with everything that's been going on. But I think it'll be a great move for him. And Catalans, you know, they lost James Maloney. Getting a guy like Mitchell Pearce to replace him, I think is going to be great for them. They'll want to continue their successful ways in the Super League. So I think a good move for them. Tyrone May is hit or miss for me. I don't think he offers much of anything to anyone. But what do you think about those two heading to the Super League?
I think for Catalan, I think getting Pearce is a big one. You know, off the back of losing Maloney, I think Pearce was still a strong performer in the NRL. So, you know, you go put him in Super League team, and I think he's going to do extremely well for Catalan. I'm kind of like you with Tyrone May. I could care less. You know, he sort of does more of his talking on Instagram than he does on the field. So, yeah. But Mitchell Pearce is a good sign.
Yeah, and Simon's just, since we talked about Maloney, he's playing in the French domestic league. He can't remember which team he's playing for, neither can I, but in his first game for them, he did what Maloney does, and he kicked the match-winning field goal.
He's a winner.
So he just can't help it. Great to see from Jimmy there. So that was really the only Super League ones that were of note for me. So now I've broken it down per team. So we've got the Raiders have signed Adam Elliott and Nick Kotrick for this year. Nick Kotrick was just granted an early release from the Bulldogs, and that in turn allowed the Bulldogs to sign Isaac Lumi, who was with the Storm, and they granted him a release because he's got a very ill father that lives in Sydney, so he wanted to move back and be with his father, and the Storm let him do it, which is great to see. You know, family come first. And the fact that I believe he was even willing to go back to Sydney and not be an NRL player if he couldn't get a deal. There's a couple of teams in Sydney, though, that I'm sure could have picked him up. But yeah, the Bulldogs at the moment are just kind of getting everybody. They also signed Braden Burns from the Rabbitohs for this year, and they signed Viliami Kikau for 2023 with the infamous photo leak that happened where there was a leak. Before we go, what was your take on that? There was a lot of conversations in my household here saying, you know, it was a dick move from the security people guy that released it, but I don't think it's a good look to be wearing another team's clothing when you're still contracted to a team. I was talking to my league writing group, said when Steve Price signed with the Warriors, one of the league magazines wanted a picture of him in a Warriors jersey, and he refused because he was still a Bulldog. So he had like a Bulldogs jersey on, and he had a Warriors jersey over his shoulder for the photo. That's as far as he'd go. But there's not a lot of players that have that kind of ethic, like guys like Steve Price and that had nowadays. But it's a great signing for the Bulldogs, despite how it was announced. But yeah, what are your takes on Elliot Kotrick with the Raiders and Burns, Lumi, and Kikau with the Bulldogs?
Well, that's quite the merry-go-round you threw at me there, Brad. Kotrick.
Sorry. And the Bulldogs also signed Reed Marnie.
Yeah. So Kotrick, like pretty much the rest of the roster, look, you know, they're struggling. He was playing in a team that was losing every week. So, he naturally wasn't looking like the rep player that he was back with the Raiders. So, maybe he's just a better fit where we're back there in Canberra, and maybe that's the best. Lumi looks like a good pickup because in his limited time with the Storm, he looked like quite the prospect. So, that could be a diamond there waiting for them. Who else did we have? Kickout. Yeah, I mean, like you say, not many people hold themselves in the same esteem as the great Steve Price. He's probably one of the great humans, along with Simon Mannering. Letting my bias shine through. But yeah, bit of a dick move from the security, like you say, mate. I think that kind of thing probably happens more often than you think. It's just you don't have people leaking photos. So, but that's another good pickup for them, who seem to be becoming the new Roosters.
The new Roosters?
Yeah. It's hard to argue otherwise. I mean,
yeah.
When does the cap finish?
Well, yeah, they've talked about it. They've been open about the salary cap troubles they're currently in because of these signings. I think they said, like, to fill out their top 30 for 2023, they're going to have to release players because they don't have enough to cover the spots they have, because you've got to pay a minimum. I think it was like 100 or 110K was the minimum, and they didn't have enough to evenly do that because of how many players they signed. So that's why you see guys like Kotrick getting released, because Kotrick was on big money
for sure.
That. So at least you're seeing that the Roosters, Nick Kotrick would still be there, and they'd sign all these players. But yeah, and we've got two questions here. So Simon just said security guard should be punished. I think the security guard is no more. I think once they figured out who it was, I think they let him go. And then Fanatics have asked, what are our thoughts on Cody Nikarima as a utility player off the bench for 2022?
It depends what version of Cody wants to play.
Yeah.
We see two versions of Cody Nikarima. You see the explosive one who can come up with plays that not many other people can in the team and lay on tries and go a long way to winning you games. And then you see the one who you forget he's playing. It depends which version we're going to get. If it's the latter, then I would leave him out of the team altogether. That's just me.
Harsh taskmaster. Well, thankfully, we've got the Warriors have Nathan Brown, who is a bench expert. He knows how to get that bench roster really good. I would have him there. But yeah, it depends on how the rest of the, because it depends how they're going to use Jazz.
Yeah,
I feel like Jazz can kind of still be on your bench if you have Cody there, but I feel like most teams wouldn't have both. They'd have one or the other, but then that means you would have Jazz potentially becoming hooker if something happens, so you don't want that either. But I think Jazz is he's not, I was going to say big enough. Sorry if you're watching. He's not very big, but he's very strong. So he can go into those. Like I think you could throw him into prop if you had to, and he would do your job. The guy just works hard. So I feel like you could counteract Cody by still keeping Jazz on there and throwing two big boppers, two front rowers potentially. But yeah, I would have him there at the start. If he's showing signs, like you said, of how he played this year just gone, then I would move him off. Just me.
I think, maybe to start. I think going forward, he's losing ground for me in our roster. We retained Chanel Harris-Tavita, obviously. We've got Ash Taylor on a training trial, so we still have to see how that plays out. And then, of course, further on down the track, we have Luke Metcalf coming. So, he has to really be on his game to retain a spot.
Yeah. Controversy here. Chanel's not even in my team either. So,
fair enough.
I've got Sean Johnson and Ash Taylor as my halves. But I don't want to spoil it. I've talked to you about it off air, but I've got a post, should come out soon. I should actually put it out, but I've got what I would do with Chanel. You didn't agree with me, but I've got an idea that I would do with Chanel, which would probably show why I'd get fired quicker than anyone else if I was coach. But I think it's an interesting way that keeps Chanel not only with the Warriors, but actually in the game day 17. Kind of going away from the let's make him a hooker or our number 14. So keep an eye on my Facebook page, I'll say, for that, because I don't want to waste that here right now. But Fanatics, before we move on, Fanatics was talking about the Bulldogs. He said they picked up quality signings. He thinks they're going to miss out on finals in 2022. I agree. I don't know if they'll make the 8, but yeah, like you've said there, if they're 15th or 16th, Barrett will be gone. They shouldn't be 15th or 16th with the roster they have. But I think they're going to be in that, I'll put it with like the Warriors, in that group that will either be 6th or either be 12th type thing. Like that spot there where you might just miss out on the 8 or you'll just squeak in. There's a lot of teams that are in that boat though, which that's not a boat you want to be in. But when you're the Bulldogs who have been at the bottom for feels like the past 5 years, that's an improvement. Especially they've got a lot of great signings, but they haven't worked together yet. Give them a year. I think they'll get there, but I don't think they'll be jumping to the top of the moon next year. Next, Titans, only one. They signed Will Smith. I think that was before our last show. I can't remember, so I threw him on there.
Great actor.
No, yeah. He'll do well. Storm haven't really had any either. Storm has signed William Warbrick, though, who's from the New Zealand Sevens. Good player there. You know a bit more about the Ruggers than me, but it's kind of hard to see a player go to the Storm and not be good. So I'm sure he'll do well.
Exactly.
And we got Fanatics has put CHT and CSJ in the halves. That potentially will be it as well. It's so hard to tell. There is, I think the only guarantee you have is Sean Johnson will be in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Right now, we'll hopefully get a good indication in trials to see who meshes with him best. Because I think it'll be whoever works with him better will be the one that gets the job. But Cowboys, they haven't really done any more changes. They signed Jermaine Tanoa Brown.
The great one, Peter Hiku.
Well, we already talked about Peter Hiku.
The GOAT.
This is, but they've signed Luciana Leilua for 2023, which I think is a good deal for them.
The better Leilua.
Yes, the better Leilua to go with JT. Jason Tobololo. I think it'll be a good combination there, providing they both are used right. I criticized Peyton's use of Tobololo quite a bit this year, and I think they need to use him better if they want to be successful. And Simon's also said we have a preseason game in Ballarat against the Storm, which would be good. It's good to get a good game against the Storm early on. And Fanatics said it's too early to predict anything, to be fair, about positions, which is true.
Very true.
Eels. So we talked about the Eels extending those contracts. They've actually signed Bailey Simonson, who was released from the Raiders, and they've signed Mitch Rain from the Titans for this year, and they've also got Josh Hodgson for next year, for 2023, sorry, to replace Reed Marnie. What are your takes on that? I think Hodgson's interesting. I think he's the best option they could have got after letting Reed Marnie go. But again, I'll die on my hill that Reed Marnie should have been their marquee guy at the Eels.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's so, like you say, it's not until 2023. So depends how he's holding up at that. It's still a whole season to go before that. So He's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. If he's still staying injury free and performing okay, then that's a decent pickup. Simonson is good because they need some extra outside backs. So and he showed some promise and picked up quite a few tries when playing for the Raiders. So
definitely,
that's one they probably needed. So we shall see.
Definitely. And Fanatics has asked if we know when the preseason fixtures will be released. There are a lot of teams, as he's mentioned, that have already announced theirs. Warriors haven't yet. As Simon said, we know they're playing the Storm. I just don't know when. And I don't know if there'll be more. I'm hoping there's more because we only got the one for preseason this year, and I don't think it helped them. They kind of ambled their way into the season as opposed to being prime and ready. So hopefully they have more than just the one. Back to the signings, though. Penrith Panthers, they signed Sean O'Sullivan, who he was offered a deal from the Warriors, but he decided to downgrade his future and go to a team like the Panthers, who are rubbish. And they've also signed Chris Smith. So, all joking aside, I think that's a great move for Sean O'Sullivan. He knows what he's going to get there as a half. He's not going to get a lot of game time. He's there if injuries happen or during
Origin period. Yeah.
Which isn't bad. I always saw him as a backup half anyway.
Yes.
It's how we used him. I thought he did very well when called upon for the Warriors, and I'm sure he'll be just as good for the Panthers when asked. So great move for him. And Chris Smith, I think is, meh.
Yes, I think it's good for the Panthers. I think it's good for both parties, really, because look at Origin period is when Panthers really started to struggle a bit and not having Cleary and Luai, two of your best players. You're going to need someone decent.
Especially with Matt Burton not there anymore as well.
Exactly.
So, Roosters, they were struggling, but they have managed to sign Paul Momorowski, which I think was announced before our final show. I think we did talk about it. But they've also just signed Kevin Nkwama as well on a one-year deal. He has just come back from playing for St. Helens. He had announced his retirement, but I guess the itch was still there, so they've thrown him a deal. Not a bad offer. I think he's a capable player. They've lost both Morrises, so they might need some help in that roster that they're struggling with. But I think great for him. It's probably just for the 1 year. I don't see him extending on, so a good way to end his career. And they also landed the much wanted signing of Brandon Smith. Every team wanted him apparently, but he signed with the Roosters, which they do struggle. So it's good to see them finally get a good one. What are your takes? What are your takes on it?
I think Brandon Smith will kill it there as well. I think nothing against someone like Lussick or other people they've had filling gaps there at 9, but he's going to really complete a picture there for them.
Definitely.
I think he will kill it under Trent Robinson, and with the caliber of players around him. It worries me, put it that way.
I think he makes that team a lot scarier than what it already was. Especially you think by the time that he's there, Joseph Suwali will probably be the player that everyone expects him to be at that point too. They'll be really scary. It's, I know we joke about the sombrero and there's comments there about it. They had big shoes to fill with Jake Friend having to retire, and I think there's probably no one else that could do a better job than Brandon Smith, in all honesty. I'm a fan of Brandon Smith. But I'm not a fan of the Storm, so he's gone from a team I don't really like to a team I don't really like, so it doesn't really matter. At least he didn't go to the Dragons because, as we've started now, the Dragons are now my team that I hate the most. At least he didn't do that. And coincidentally, they didn't make my list because they haven't made any signings because no one wants to go there. Back onto a team that we do like to talk about, though, the Warriors. So 2022 is a bit dry from what we already had, but they have signed Jesse Arthurs on a loan deal from the Broncos. We may as well take a side road here and chat about that for a little bit. What are your takes? I'm all for it. I think it's best for both clubs. The Warriors are a bit lean in the centers. Broncos have got quite a few spots already taken there, so he's actually going to get some game time. And when given the chance, he's done some good things with the Broncos. So it's not like they've thrown us a 16-year-old kid that has been playing reserve grade his whole life. I think he could do good things for the Warriors given the chance.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the fact I like these signings when they're a loan deal. It feels kind of like, it's let's wait and see. They might come in and be hungry for game time, do some great things. But if they come in and they're not too crash hot, then you don't have that commitment there. It's like going out on a few dates before you get married. So yeah.
And I think the Warriors loans that they've had have pretty much all been pretty good. And it's better than hearing the Warriors have thrown $1.5 million at Jesse Arthur on a 4-year deal.
Exactly.
He doesn't do well. So yeah, I like that. But yeah, for 2023, we talked about it a lot on our show. The rumors came true. Murata Nakora and Luke Metcalf both signed for 2023. There have been rumors that the Warriors were interested in potentially giving the Sharks Cody Nikorima to get Metcalf here early. That's complete rumor mill. So take it with a grain of salt. But what are your thoughts on Nakora and Metcalf becoming Warriors?
Yeah, I'm content with that. I think we had a list sort of set out of possible recruits. Those two were on it, and Joey Manu, among a couple other people. But obviously once we found out we weren't going to get Manu, getting these two, Metcalf and Niokore is good. I'm happy enough with the terms of their deals as well. So I think I'm excited about Metcalf. I think he showed a lot of potential and could really do some good things with the Warriors when he gets here. Nakora, I don't mind. It just depends. I don't know what they're going to do with him. I know he played a lot of center for Parramatta when he had to. I don't know if they're going to use him as center. Might use him in the second row, but the biggest issue with the Warriors second row is that there's so many good ones that are going to miss the cut. It's a good problem to have. But I'm the president of the Ben Murdoch Basila fan club, and seeing all these names, it looks like he might not be playing a lot in first grade potentially, which upsets me. But yeah, I'm happy with these signings. It's good for depth, which Fanatics has commented on. I think the depth for him was talking about Jesse Arthurs because he says you never know with injuries in the outside backs, which is true. We've also got a thing where Reece Walsh isn't playing the first couple of weeks. So there will be positions in the outside backs that need filling. So guys like Arthur's coming straight in will help with that. He is a bit of a bad boy too, old Reece Walsh. He's not a stranger to being suspended now.
He's been, that's true. I was going to say he's on babysitter watch right now in the off season to make sure there's no more trouble. Next team talk about with the Tigers. They signed Tyrone Peachy, which I think we did talk about in our last show.
Yeah, we did.
They've also got Junior Tupou from Rugby Union. That's for this year, but next year they've got Api Carousel and Isaiah Papali'i, which thinks both of those are great signings.
Yeah, huge step in the right direction.
I know Leilua was a bit upset that they signed a guy like Papali'i, but I think we did talk about it. There were rumors that they were willing to offer a deal to Papali'i, and his deal was less than what Leilua wanted. And if you put the two against each other last year on last year's performances alone, you would take Papali'i for less money than paying extra for Leilua.
All day.
So I think it's a good move for the Tigers. They need a lot of help. And I think, Coruscant, I think, is going to do wonders for them. We saw how much better the Tigers were when they borrowed Harry Grant and they actually had a decent hooker. So, I don't think the Tigers are going to do great 2022. If the Dragons weren't in the comp, they'd probably be wooden spoon. But they 2023, I think they look a lot better, which is scary because it looks like there's so many teams that look like they're going to be really good in 2023.
Yeah.
But that leaves us with just the Dolphins, who haven't got any players for 2022, obviously, but they have signed Felice Kafusi, Ray Stone, and today they announced they signed Jermaine Ozako for 2023. They also signed youngsters Valence Tafari, Harrison Graham, and Michael Roberts, who is, I believe, James Roberts' little brother. What are your takes? We kind of talked about it before the show, about the Dolphins. I haven't been excited by any of the signings. As really, Jermaine Osako, I do really like, but I don't think he's on the top of anyone's list as a musket, but I think he's a handy footballer. He can play wing, centre, fullback. He's a good goal kicker. So I don't mind that. Having Felice Kafusi as like your first big name signing, I thought was a bit weird. I think he is a good player. But I'm not sure if that's the player I would have started with. But what are your takes on the signings?
Yeah, no, I agree. He has been a great player at the Storm, but he's one of those players that I sit there and look at him and think, is he great because he's at the Storm or with Queensland? He's had a lot of great players around him. If he's one of your marquee players, how is he going to fare outside of that setup of the Storm? So it's an interesting one. Ray Stone again is, solid.
He's a solid player.
Yeah. Asako, again, like you say, he can be exciting. He has his downsides as well. He's not going to be the type of player to win your premiership, but straight out of the gate, they're probably not expecting to anyway. They're a new team.
Yeah.
And I think it's with the Dolphins, it's going to be a little bit of sit back and see how we go with recruitment. So, I think there's still a lot of time and a lot to unfold between now and then. And you never know. Maybe they pick up a Kalen Ponga down the track or something.
And I see Paul decided to show up. Better late than never. It's good to see. But he's come just at the end of the show. That was the last we had for signings. So, that's the end of our Christmas special. I hope you all have a good Christmas and New Year's Eve. We'll be back around February, I think is probably a good time to start again. Richie, I have to talk to you and Paul to see when you're ready to come back. For the start of season 3 of the standoff, I think we'll do kind of like we did kind of Dan Marino. I love Dan Marino. Fantastic quarterback. Deserves a lot more praise than he got. But we'll come back in February for a preseason special, which we'll do. I think we'll do bold predictions. Kind of did it before you joined me last year, Richie, but I didn't write any of them down. So I think we could actually do it this year where we make our predictions, write them down, and see who was closer to being right.
We'll go bigger and better.
Just so we have something for our end of year when we do our awards, we can look back and see who actually knows what they're talking about between the two of us.
Each other.
So keep an eye out on Facebook and keep an eye out for when we say that new show will be. But thanks again for joining me tonight, Richie. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, as always, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you all have a really good Christmas. Be safe, be responsible, don't drink too much, wash your hands, don't cough on people, all that good stuff, and hope Santa really delivers for you all.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in tonight and joining us on the standoff with Brad and Richie, and hope to see you all again soon. Good night.